and welcome to another episode of All Things Conflict with me, your host, Maria Arper. And in today's episode, I'm really happy to welcome Jonah Jones, who is a director and consultant of Hampton House, a consultancy that helps people become the best version of themselves they can be. And who better to do this than Jonah, a man who has had everything taken away from him, including his name. I've been really interested in how Jonah, who was a professional footballer, how he's taken those principles of teamwork and collaboration and used those to help people progress in life. Let's jump into the conversation. Thank you. Wow, Jonah, how amazing that we're having this conversation. I mean, we didn't meet that long ago. We met this year through a mutual friend.
Yep.
And we met at when you were running a sort of football program, weren't you, for young footballers?
Yep, that's right.
And I came up and met you, and I think we sort of automatically fell in love with each other,
completely.
Didn't we? And went, oh my God, this is like amazing.
Yeah.
You are such an inspirational human being, and it's just great to be in your presence. And you were a professional footballer. You've moved into football management, and then you've also started a business, or you have several business interests. And first of all, why don't you just introduce yourself? I mean, I think the thing that touched me the most was you're a man who's had everything taken away from you, including your name.
Yes.
So please introduce yourself.
Maria, thank you ever so much. And it's a real privilege and an honor to have this opportunity to speak with you. So, thank you so much for inviting me on. Jonah Jones, real name. As you say, we had a brilliant opportunity to connect during the summer when I was working with the Professional Footballers Association, who I work with, and we were running a development academy for out-of-contract professional players that has the objective of getting them back into other and new professional clubs. So it's an environment, a cultural environment to support, to rebuild, to re-educate, to motivate, and to promote all of these players who are facing a really challenging time, having left one club and they're really uncertain about the future. They are staring down the barrel of unemployment, and considering the highfalutin world of football that they come from, it's a really scary prospect. And so there's an awful lot of psychological work and a mentoring work that we do with them. And one of the reasons why it's a particular passion project of mine really plays into my own personal background, because as you alluded to, even my name, my birth name is Jonah Jones. And I'm an abandoned baby. I was brought up in South London, born in Wandsworth, abandoned baby, brought up through the care system. And when I was in the care system, they deemed, and this is a couple of years ago, they deemed my name to be maybe a little bit too ethnic, as was deemed years and years ago. And as a result of which, renamed me with a very sort of Church of England name of Mark. So any papers and documentation carries the name Mark Jones. And so through my life, I've had to kind of, from a professional sense, be known as that, but with a birth name of Jonah. So all of friends and associates, and obviously yourself very much included, brilliantly use my real name, as do I, apart from sort of, official documentation, the government name. So it's brilliant in this day and age to be able to have the opportunity to even use your own name and to sort of fight. And I feel it's a bit of personal justice, if you like, something that's really passionate and powerful to myself. I understand what it is to have lots of things taken away and the drive to try and regain those things and to build on those things. And that's something that I like to put back into organizations and business and individuals, both inside and outside of football. So, and I'm sure we'll cover more of that as we go on.
Fantastic. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, what a moving story. And then hearing that, part of your struggle is being able to recognize how can you put those things in for people who, you've obviously been very driven and you've obviously found some sort of inner strength or inner power. But for those people that aren't as driven, or for whatever reason, is saying, don't we all have a duty to level the playing field?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant. I mean, I love that. It's such a powerful term that you've used, and kind of an analogy, really, because both, in life, irrespective of whether it's in sport, in business, in any day life, it is a playing field. We have one opportunity at this thing called life, and if we play at it at our very best, we can get an awful lot out of it. And there are loads and loads of barriers in the way. Some are real barriers, some are created barriers, and we try to do everything we can to help people acknowledge and understand what their individual and collective barriers might be, and do everything we can to try and help them remove those barriers and to see a clear pathway through and support them on that pathway. Because it's a word that will come up, I'm sure, in this conversation. A lot of the work we do falls under the moniker of elite, and that's a really subjective term, Maria. But our belief really passionately is everyone's elite in their own way, and it's trying to help everybody find their own level of eliteness. What is the very best version of you, and how can we support you being that very best version and enjoying being that very best version?
So we're all elite.
Yes.
And we all have the power to be, and we have the power to be all sorts of things, don't
Absolutely.
we?
Yes.
And if I've understood you, what we're looking is to encourage, help, support, teach, maybe even sort of shake people into being the most elite version of themselves.
Absolutely that. And the word that we use, which is maybe slightly unusual, but the word we use is to unleash. We unleash the power and the potential of people. There's a lot of P's in that, but to try and explain to people, what we're saying is, look, we're going to unleash everything that's inside you. Some of it some of it you're hiding, some of it you don't even know is there. So we are going to unleash your power and your potential. Where that takes us is going to be driven by you, and we're here to guide and to support that. But and what that does from an individual and then a collective basis is that starts to reshape culture. It starts to reshape a group, an individual, a business, an environment, a community, and it goes wider and wider and wider. And what you start to see is the generation of momentum, and that is an incredibly powerful thing.
So closing the gap between potential and reality. So that's what I'm getting, is that everybody has potential. There's no person that doesn't have potential.
Yep.
But it's how do you evidence and how do you close that gap so the potential becomes as close to realised as possible within the circumstances that a person finds himself in.
Absolutely right. And there are, again, it's trying to bring to life some of these cliches that we hear when people talk about you are a product of your environment and all of that good stuff. So what does that actually mean? In reality, what does that mean? And then we got to do something about it, because you're a product of your environment, and the response that tends to go through people's minds are, yeah, so what? Yeah, I am. And so how do we bring that to life and do something positive about that? Because ultimately it's understanding those challenges, and really the work, which doesn't happen all too often, but the work is to see the world through that person's eyes, to understand their world, wherever that is and however they are and whoever they are. Spend some time and invest in really getting to understand that individual, because once you've got that knowledge base, then we can apply the appropriate diagnostic skills to create the right kind of support and solutions that will help them to unleash their potential.
So what I'm telling myself is that, we've been leading sort of parallel lives, if you like, in completely different contexts and circumstances. I grew up in rough area of Islington, in the 60s, and saw some brutality and things like that. You grew up in the care system, so disadvantaged or underprivileged, whatever words you want to throw at it. And then we went through our own struggles. And then, if I've understood, you've taken those struggles and and then grown and developed. And some things are more luck than judgment. Some things are your own determination. Some
Yeah.
things come from a refusal to accept the status quo. I mean, that's often now I've done, I've just been
Yeah.
refusing to accept that this is my lot in life.
Yeah.
And then you go through this whole journey and you come out with some learning. And then the idea is that, what took me 40 years, I've wanted to distill into how do you bottle that, and
Yeah.
how do you give
Yes.
it to someone so they don't have to take 40 years over it? Would that be
Absolutely
a
right.
good, does
It's a
that land?
brilliant summation of it. That's exactly what it is. And it's recognizing the trials and tribulations that you've
Yeah,
gone through,
yeah,
but actually extrapolating out the learnings from that and saying, okay,
exactly.
that's happened. How can we use that for some good?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely right.
So I'm going to ask you, to look back on that journey and perhaps throw out a few of those struggles that you then said, well, so for me it was, this is a struggle, this is, whatever it is. Where can I, who can explain this to me, or where can I do some learning, or how can I understand this better? So have you got a couple of examples of that? I mean, you must have
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the way you grew up.
yeah, absolutely. I think what happens is when it's a constant journey of it's a almost an investigatory process that happens subconsciously, because when you come from nowhere and you have no background, there is no infrastructure, there is no family, and you sort of move from pillar to post. It's really interesting. It wasn't that long ago I was actually sharing this example with people. One of the things that used to happen back in the system, because you would be sent out to different sort of foster homes, and uniquely in my case, I was adopted a couple of times. There was a bit of a breakdown in a couple of the adopted families. It didn't then become very safe environments, so I had to come back into the system. But anyway, the structure was that when you went out, you weren't allowed to keep any gifts that were given to you, because they recognized that you'd be going back into the homes, the care homes or whatever. If you'd gone back in with gifts from a particular foster, that would create a longing for that place that you were no longer in, so you weren't allowed to keep them. And it was,
Just,
yeah,
it's
I know.
preposterous, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting. And there was one, being, I guess, at heart, the rebel at heart, I smuggled a teddy bear that I was given, aptly named Brown Bear, and I never forget it. And I tell my children now, and they laugh, and they do. And I'm talking about, it was the first piece of contraband that I'd ever acquired, and it was a little brown teddy bear that I called Brown Bear, right? And it was, but the relevance of it is, it's so powerful and prominent and sort of poignant in my life, but I'm still talking about it now. I'm actually still talking about the fact that I had made a point of almost rebelling against it, because I felt that was huge injustice. They give me a gift. In my very simplistic brain, that's my gift. That's now, I don't have much. I can't go to a parent, an auntie, an uncle, a grandparent, whatever. And so if I'm given that, that's sort of my property and my pride. So to take that away, I felt was the hugest piece of injustice, and I hated it. So I went, no, actually, something inside me, I'm going to rebel. I'm going to do something. So I managed to move quite. But it's really the learning from that, the understanding that actually all it would have taken would have been a little bit of understanding of who I was as a child at that point, to really sort of, Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, understand before you're understood. I live by that mantra in all the work that we do, social work, business work, professional work, in football, wherever it is, we always apply understand before you're understood. And I think that's really, really powerful. And then sort of moving on, again, with how society was many, many years ago, there was a heightened level of dislike to various groups. I mean, listen, there's an element of that nowadays. We don't want to get too political, but certainly in our day, we came up through some challenging times of racial problems. And what I found, I mean, again, very recently, I was in the conversation talking about football and talking about what a safe haven it had always been. But going back to when I was going through schooling, you'd be playing football all the time. Everyone talks about all the break times and lunch times, and, and after school, you'd have loads and loads of games of football. And people were like, yeah, that's normal. That goes on nowadays. And I said, yeah, but the games we played, the sides were blacks versus whites. And it was like a war zone. And you found a solace in a brotherhood, actually being part of what you felt was a safe environment in these football games. But you're actually battling against almost the system, and you could find that and feel that. And then when any of you who had any kind of sporting talent were selected into different teams and you were broken up out of that core, you really felt the alienation of being, the one person in a much larger group or in a whole big environment. And, there were lots of comments and challenges that were placed against you purely and simply because you look different, and people didn't want to acknowledge that perhaps you had some ability that was almost used against you. They didn't like the fact that because you were from this minority, they didn't want you to shine. And so you actually felt, and we even talk nowadays, we talk about who wants you to win. In life generally, who actually wants you to win? Who's in your corner? Because we fought against loads and loads of people who actively don't want you to win. So that in itself creates a determination and a fire in your stomach too. And the question, Maria, you have to ask yourself all the time: are you doing it to prove them wrong or to prove yourself right? What's that intrinsic motivation? Are you motivated towards something? Are you motivated away from something? And a lot of the work that we do stems out of having lived through that, because everyone's got their own internal motivation. Are you motivated towards that big goal of whatever it is, that big shiny thing? Or are you motivated away from a horrible situation that you've been? And having come through that journey, it's really good to be able to use that as a motivation to support and help people going through their own journey.
That is such an important point, because invariably it's not going to be one or the other. It's going to be a bit of both.
Yes.
Get away from something,
yep,
and then move into something.
Yes.
And in that transition, because sometimes it's you're moving out of survival mode.
Absolutely.
And then there's a point where survival mode has become your modus operandi, even when you're becoming successful, even the entrepreneur who's still actually only doing it out of fear, fear of destitution, who's being driven by fear of and so that survival mode becomes a way of life. And it's really interesting, because the skills that will get you from here to here are not necessarily the skills or the resources that will get you from here to here.
Maria, that is absolutely brilliant, because a lot of the work we do in the world of transformation and sort of business transformation, people, organizational transformation, transformational leadership, we did a whole big program, which is highfalutinly called executive reinvention. And there's a couple of key mantras to that, which apply in life as well as business. And what it says is, one of the key ones says, everything that brings you to a point prevents you from moving on from it.
Oh, I love that. Yes.
Everything that takes you to a point stops you moving up from it and away from it, because the survival mode that you just talked about has got somebody to somewhere. If they stay in survival mode, they will never step up into the winning mode. And so again, to try and give that a badge and something that people can understand when we're working through that, the statement is, you have to dare to lose to win. You have to be brave enough to lose to be able to win. And that comes from feel the fear and do it anyway. And it's all of that good stuff. And it's understanding that actually, as you transition, all of those core skills that have brought you somewhere, you now have to let go of, which is really uncomfortable.
I talk about that as getting into the place of surrender.
Yes.
But surrender does not mean disabling or paralyzing yourself.
Absolutely.
And so how I refer to that is there comes a point, so we're driven, you know, want to get away from the poverty or, you know, whatever it was.
Yes.
And we're propelling ourselves. Sometimes we use anger as rocket fuel.
Yes.
Sometimes, you know, we use all sorts of ways in that survival mode to try and get out of survival mode. But then for me, what I've learned, and you know, it's something I look back on and wish I'd learned earlier, was that when I then want to move into that other space, I mustn't do it through any form of defiance, belligerence, hostility. If it comes from that place and I'm still carrying the same crap with me, and it will keep showing itself in all the conflicts that arise.
Yes. And eventually, especially if you're able to conduct any form of analysis, what you'll recognize is all of those behaviors that you just listed are actually pulling you back.
Yes.
They're holding on to your ankle. In the Caribbean home, we call it a crab pot mentality.
Right, I like that.
Because when you catch crabs, you go out and go fishing, and you get the beautiful crabs you're going to cook. You can put them in a pot, a big deep pot, and we don't put a lid in the pot because if any of the crabs start crawling up to try and escape, the others pull them back down again.
Right.
So the crab pot mentality is you will find something pulling you back all the time as you start to try and climb, survive. Those negative behaviors will pull at you and pull you back down, and they prevent you from moving on. So again, we talk about reduce the crab pot mentality. What propels you? What helps you? Who's giving you the lift up? What's giving you the lift up? What is it you can let go of? And what do you need to replace it with? Because the work, again, is to replace it with something that's really positive and helps you to unleash yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I think where I wanted to go next, as you were speaking, was, you know, obviously not with any names or anything that could identify, but could you give us a couple of really good examples of people that have come through this process with you at different layers of society, or within the football world or within the business world, you know, wherever?
Yeah, absolutely. We've I think the loveliest part, the best part about it is having a model and a process, if you like, an overarching strategy that doesn't discriminate in any way, shape, or form. You know, it doesn't matter whether it's an individual one-to-one personal program of development to support an individual, right the way to a huge global organization. And we've been blessed and fortunate over the years to be able to cover all of that spectrum, but applying the same kind of principle. So within that, we're able to find people who themselves have been through horrifically challenging, trials and tribulations throughout their life. And very often, once they realize that there is a real genuine care in the work that we're doing, irrespective of the broader context, it could be for X, Y, and Z global organization, actually doesn't matter. What matters is you. What matters is the individual. And being able to prove that creates a safety and a comfort. And we've got numerous scenarios where people have actually really confided in us to share some really deep and personal challenges that they themselves had faced, but being able to, almost from a credibility perspective, be able to say, look, before you disclose anything, we need to prove to you our authenticity here. And so let's give you some disclosure. So actually being brave enough, metaphorically, to kind of roll our sleeves up first and say, right, let me tell you warts and all, who we are, what we are, and why we're doing this. So where this actually comes from. So that, you use the phrase in our introduction, Maria, around instantly connecting and falling in love. And that's purely and simply because of an absolute mutual trust and a respect to me saying, Maria, through our mutual connection, being told all about you, I hugely respect what you do, who you are, what you are, how you are. And as a sign of that, There is no side here. I'm going to give it to you, warts and all. Everything's coming out. It's going to be on the table. Some of it you might like, some of it you might hate. But what you'll understand is it's authentic, it's genuine. So you can build a trust from that base. And that is something that we've always done and will always do. So when people receive that, they're shocked. Because very often, as you know, you have people who are totally, I'm putting my work face. What do you mean your work face? You are who you are, who you are. So actually, if you're brave enough, scared enough in the first instance, but if you're brave enough to be your authentic self, it shines. So when we do that, getting back to your question, when we're able to do that and actually share that with people, we're giving them the upper hand. We're putting them in a position of power that they've never probably been in before. We're allowing them to have this high ground. These consultants, this individual, this counselor, this mentor, whomever, whatever role we're taking, we're actually putting ourselves on a lower rung and actually saying, okay, before we start any of this, out of respect to you, we're going to share who we are. We're going to share what we are, where we come from. Because I want you to appreciate why this is so important, why you are so important. This isn't being done to tick a box. This is being done so that you can be the very best version of yourself. So when they receive that information, they feel so much more comfortable than divulging their own struggles and their own issues and their own challenges. And then for us to be able to work with that, apply the skills and the tools and the techniques that we have in our toolkit, if you like, and then you get massive results, instant results. It's like the proverbial game of snakes and ladders. I'm aging myself there, but it really is. And it's avoiding those snakes and helping us collectively go up the ladders, and people feel that. So you get individual, group, and then organizational massive uplifts in performance and personality and feeling, and that in itself leads to a better environment and a culture, and then a complete transformation of that work environment now becomes a safe and a happy space and something that people enjoy going into. We've seen that over the year on year, and that's in a huge variety of industry. And the relevance of that, Maria, is being able to give those examples, because again, going back to authenticity, we like to be able to share real life examples. This isn't out of a book. It's not that. Let's share with you some real life examples. Let's, industry X. Let me share industry Y, totally different to yours, but they've got exactly the same challenges. We were talking in the summer, I'm working with professional footballers, but as I said to you, every aspect of the work that we do every day here applies in any random industry. We could be working in banking, financial services. We could be working in the industry sector. We could be working in the medical sector. It doesn't matter. They're facing exactly the same trials and tribulations. And so being able to break down and to disseminate those challenges and what we're able to do to change them from problems into solutions, and also the skills transference to enable those organizations to have self-sustainability, those become really, really powerful case studies that you can then share, and we share with completely other industries, with other people, with other groups.
Amazing. Yeah. I can feel an energetic sort of aliveness around what you're offering. And I think I want to go back to, which you've said in different ways throughout this conversation, is it starts with holding somebody centric to the process and seeing the world from their viewpoint. It starts there. Yeah. And I guess that on some level, that's part of your own healing journey, because you didn't have anyone to do that for you.
Absolutely.
I mean, you had corporate people doing it, and an odd foster parent or whatever, but nothing consistent. And so I'm guessing, because we're all trying to heal our wounds one way or another.
Yes.
I'm guessing that you have lived experience of what it's like to not have somebody constantly standing your corner.
Yes. And therefore the if you like, the brilliance of that is knowing the value of being in someone else's corner.
Yeah. Yes,
And
exactly.
ensuring that we can
Yeah.
support other people, having people in their corner
Yes.
and putting a real value around that. And then
Yeah.
sometimes, because, you know, human nature being what it is, if the majority of people have always had people in their corner, they take it for granted and it's not a problem. It's not a negative. It's just something that's always been there. It's a constant. It's that, you know, it's the painting that's on the wall. And after a while, you forget what the painting is. It's just there. So it's really bringing that back to life and putting a value around it and helping people to understand that and see that from a different perspective. So you're absolutely right.
Amazing. So, okay. So I want to sort of make the link. This series is called Justice Redesigned.
Yeah.
And, you know about injustice, you've
Yeah.
lived injustice, and, bringing this, as I said earlier, leveling the playing field. So I want to really kind of push you to sort of tell me, how does this now relate to justice in society? How does this relate to, where do you think the pressure points are? What do you think needs to change? How does this work support something that's not just a sort of corporate, or sports world? How does
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
support that? Because it's really important that we see beyond the fact that you run a business, because you're doing something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And a brilliant question. For me, when you, I think one of the first things is to recognize and identify injustice because, again, everybody has their own connection to that. People might have perceptions, there might be cliched injustice, there might be obvious inherent injustice. But again, understand each individual to understand and recognize what do they feel is the and are the injustices that they're facing or they're having to overcome or they themselves have been beaten down by, and really understanding that, because that is so insightful. It's incredible. And again, it could, this understand before you're understood principle is incredible because people have their own standards and things that are really, really important to them. And if anybody is disparaging towards that, even, it could be in what other people perceive to be humor, but it could massively switch other people off. And the fact that they then become a victim of this so-called humor could be huge. They could feel really bullied, alienated. They could feel, put down, whatever it is. Now, the various industries we come from, we're really lucky to have been able to see this really quite outwardly and very, very powerfully. I've had all sorts of discrimination in the sporting world and the football world, and you have to overcome that and the injustice of people casting aspersions because of the color of your skin, the fact that you look different, you might sound different, or culturally you might eat or do different things to the norm, and all of those kind of scenarios. So you're constantly fighting against that, so you understand what it is to face and to overcome injustice, and you recognize the powerful feeling of doing so and achieving success in spite of all those injustices. So when you are then faced with people, don't judge them based on your own viewpoint, understand from them, find out from them. And that's something that we do an awful lot. And again, it's got nothing to do with the corporate world, Maria. That's got to do with the individual people. I know a lot of the brilliant work that you do supports prisoners and prisoners looking to reform, and some of the work that we've done and some of the conversations that we've had with our mutual connections are, and in life, everyone deserves another chance, everyone. So actually, there are loads and loads and loads of things you can do to prepare people, to support people ready for that next opportunity. And whether or not that's somebody who's been in that situation or somebody that, again, is perceived to be in a completely different world, until we spend the time understanding, we'll never really know. So try and appreciate what really matters to them. What really matters to them. We do an exercise, if I may just share a,
Yeah, lovely.
thank you. So we've got an exercise that we do with people, and it's called the dimsel in distress. Not the damsel, it's a dimsel. So it's neutrally, there's no gender to it. It's completely balanced. So appeals to anybody. And it's it's just a little, almost like a journey into a medieval time. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to rescue a dimsel from a castle. Okay. And we have various challenges. There's a fire-breathing dragon we have to fight. There's a horrible knight. We've got to get across a moat. We've got to get through portcullis and all this good stuff. And it's almost like a verbal Dungeons and Dragons challenge. And we do this in a group setting. And the fun part of it is it takes people into the imaginary world. But to do it, we ask them to individually and privately write down the 6 most important things in their life. And that could be a person, it could be a value, it could be a material thing or things, it could be a group, it could be extended family, it could be their culture, it could, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's individual to them. They write them down on 6 pieces of paper and they fold the pieces of paper, Maria. And then when we're narrating this, we narrate the challenge, and it's the only way we can achieve the challenge is the collective force of everybody coming together. But to do it, they have to give up one of those items. So each individual person has to go through the personal turmoil of ranking all those things and understanding themselves and their life and what matters and how everything they do connects to these 6 things, and rank them. And we go through this journey and actually get people to give things up, and we physically go around the room with a bean and actually get them to physically let go of it. And it breaks people, you can imagine. And we don't ask them to say what it is, but you watch the anguish on their face. And we carry right the way through, and the quest continues to the final battle, to fight the nasty knight and rescue the dimsel. And people are allowed to keep 2 of the 6 items. You've got to give up 4, keep 2. And then at the end, you share in the group the 2 that you've kept and why, and what they mean to you in the context of your life. So you understand the very, very, very crystallized, most important things. When you have people sharing things like my pets, because my family, my immediate family have died, if people make a silly statement like, oh, I kicked the dog, or some joke that has an impact on animal cruelty and animal welfare, the person in the room who's just told them, actually, my pets are the most important things in my life, there's a context point. So if you want to talk about people feeling discriminated against, or people feeling marginalized, these are the types of exercises we will run with groups at any organization. It could be a social group. It might be a group of professional footballers. It could be a group of managers or technical directors who run football associations around the world. It could be boards of directors at conglomerates. It could be frontline support staff in a contact center. It doesn't matter. It could be personal, completely pro bono work we're doing in communities to help people from disadvantaged background. We don't discriminate because we know the power of that work. So understanding what really matters to people helps you to understand what discrimination can easily be to them, and then how to be, and because it's a process of education. And so again, it's taking that education forward.
So what's really speaking to me is, in the earlier part of our conversation, we were talking about, seeing the world from the point of view of the individual.
Yeah.
But, that's step 1. Step 2 is having then those individuals who now believe that somebody sees the world from their point of view, understand how they fit into the weave.
Correct.
Of all the different people and all the difference that we will encounter.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help thinking about you as you were sharing that exercise, because firstly, your passion and your smiles and everything around that exercise and what it means, and you've clearly seen some real transformation through it. But I must admit, I was thinking about your 6 important items, and I wondered where Brown Bear was.
Yeah,
Those 6 important items. Would
absolutely.
you have let go? And
Yeah.
isn't that interesting?
It's brilliant because one of the key, and again, you've raised a great point. What's really important to add to the exercise that we do, and you've just brought it up, is we participate in it as ourselves.
Yeah.
So there's, we might be the facilitator, I might be the facilitator, my colleagues might be the facilitators when we do it.
Yeah.
Bearing in mind, we're working with this group, and if we are a coach, a counsellor, a mentor, a consultant, whatever role we're taking based on whichever group of people we're working with, we're still getting to know these people. We're still working with these people. So we absolutely do that. And we're divulging this really deep and personal stuff to them as well, because we know that actually, once we conclude this, we're forming a relationship, and that formation of that relationship is going to be the foundation for success as we go forward.
Absolutely.
So we absolutely share our personal insights as well.
I mean, for me, everything begins with relationship, and we can turn everything scientific and logical and evidence-based, and we can argue and debate and prove our points. But you can't even do that if you don't have a relationship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And definitely from that leadership perspective, that is absolutely intrinsic to what they should be doing as leaders, because you're given the privileged position of being, charged with supporting and leading and developing anyone or anything. The very least you can do and should be doing is absolutely know everybody that you work with properly, know your colleagues. We do an awful lot of work, diagnostic work, building the profile of people so they can understand themselves, most importantly, and then understand their colleagues and other people. How are they and why are they the way that they are? And by giving them that understanding, you can build a much better connection. What is the individual's communication preference? What's their listening style? What's their learning style? What's their conflict style? All of these ways that people go about. We do the work to diagnose all of that. And so different groups of people get a brilliant insight, firstly to themselves, but also to their colleagues. So they understand why, Maria, if you and I are having this conversation, if you are very heavily a visual communicator, and I'm an auditory communicator, you're going to say, Jonah, can you see what I'm saying? And I'm going to say, Maria, can you hear what I'm saying? Well, that's not going to chime so well. Chime is auditory. But if I say, oh, I can see what you mean, we're speaking on the same channel now. So actually, let's spend the time and let's give the respect to each individual person to get to understand them, because then with the appropriate behavioral change and a bit of skills development, we help people be able to use the right wavelength and the right channel to the people or the group that they're working with.
Yes. I've said amazing so many times because I am, I'm so enthralled. And I notice that every time you speak, I just go amazing. And I suppose I want to, our time is coming to an end for this podcast, and I want to sort of join up some dots, I suppose. If someone was listening to this podcast and they felt, what's one small step I can take? So what would be one small step that would, help someone to kind of put a pause on the current trajectory and change trajectory? What's that first step?
I think the first step is quite profound and hopefully quite powerful. I think the very first step is to go and find a mirror and look in it and look at yourself without looking away in a mirror for 60 seconds, which is a long, long time, for 60 seconds, and say repeatedly, I am enough. I am good. I am great. And keep repeating that like a mantra. I am enough. I am good. I am great. and keep repeating it and repeating it. And it will feel really, really weird and alien and uncomfortable. And people might not like it. And it's the most pure exercise of self-validation. Because the first thing is you have to remove the shield. Because what happens is, and you know, you're an absolute expert in this, but as we know, when people do go through trauma and challenge, what they do is they put up a defensive shield, and that defensive shield just gets thicker and thicker and thicker every year that they get older. But the only way to address it and to deal with it is to peel back every layer to the age they were when the issue happened, which is why top counsellors regress the individual and they have a conversation with a 50-year-old person as if they were 5 when they faced the trauma. It's the only way you can move forward from it. So when we're starting to talk about this personal transformation, this business improvement, this personal improvement, this social improvement, just recognize that you yourself are brilliant. You are enough. You are good. You are great. And repeat it to a point where you believe it and you're comfortable saying it to yourself, because that's the biggest arbiter of everything is yourself. So you've got to be able to look at yourself and not look away. And it has to, when it can be genuine and authentic, that gives you a start point, because from then you can be unleashed.
Yeah, the way I talk about that is I can only love another person to the extent that I love myself.
Absolutely.
So we better all fall in love with ourselves.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely that.
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to say amazing again. I'm saying amazing with you. And I think that's because the effect you're having on me as I listen to you speak. So, Jonah, what an amazing conversation. I love being in your presence. I'm sure we're going to do some amazing things together. And I have a surprise question at the end of this podcast. And that is, if I were to give you the keys to the Ministry of Justice and say you can make one change immediately, what change would you make?
Wow, what a brilliant question. I think that if we were able to give everyone a second chance, a real powerful second chance, I believe what it would do is it would actually reduce people. It would significantly reduce people making really bad decisions, because they knew and they had the solace in their heart that there is some care.
Yes.
There is a way out. There is an opportunity. And I think in the badge of second chance, it could be translated to opportunity. That's what I would want everyone to have.
Yeah, so I think I would refine that by saying a resourced second chance.
Absolutely, a resourced second chance. Brilliant. I completely agree. Yeah, definitely that.
Amazing. What a great answer. And thank you. Thank you for this time today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Let's see where it takes us.
Been wonderful. Thank you so much for the opportunity of speaking with you. Really enjoyed it.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.